stars in the spotlight, secrets in the night. Headlines take flight, we're the keepers of the light. The talk of shame, we know the name. Fame's the game, join the flame.
Good morning. Happy Thursday. We're here with our Thursday Live. This is the Talk of Shame channel. You know, you're here for the pop culture, for the gossip, all of the things. Today, we wanted to talk about Gary Coleman because, you know, I was going to talk about him Tuesday. I watched the Gary doc on Peacock over the weekend and had planned to talk about him on the Tuesday Live, but then Diddy got indicted and we had to read through that whole indictment. So Gary Coleman got pushed back a bit, but I do still want to talk about him. Obviously, make sure you're following this channel. Again, I do lives every Tuesday, every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Sometimes it's about some gossip, sometimes it's about some top headlines, and sometimes, like today, it is a deep dive into the Gary Coleman Peacock doc, which, you know, I feel like everything I've ever learned about Gary Coleman has been, you know, it's always some sort of headline news about, in his later years, all of the trouble. And obviously he was one of the most famous child stars ever, probably one of the first that a lot of people can remember. And, you know, he obviously had a very tough childhood, but I think there was stuff that came out in this documentary that I was learning for the first time. If you haven't watched it, this is the Gary doc that I'm talking about. Again, it's on Peacock. I think it was about 90 minutes. So, you know, really, you know, quick watch. And it really centers on kind of like these are the main players that it really centers around. Gary Coleman and his, you know, ex-wife. It was the last person he was married to before he passed away, Shannon Price. And the documentary kicks off kind of with the question, you know, what happened to Gary when he died? You know, are there unanswered questions? Because I guess at the time that Gary Coleman died, you know, he was found in his home bleeding unconscious from his head. And a lot of people, because him and Shannon had such a tumultuous relationship that got violent, they thought that she could have something to do with his death. So I didn't realize at the time that that had been, you know, a thing that people had questioned. So she seemed really excited in this doc. Like you see her sit down for her interview and she's almost like gleeful and joyful that she's like getting to tell her side of the story. It's almost like she feels like, you know, nobody's ever listened. And she seems kind of really excited to tell her story. Then it focuses a lot on Gary's parents. You know, Gary had to sue his parents. And we learn more about that because, you know, we started hearing about conservatorships, obviously with Britney Spears, with Amanda Bynes. But I don't feel like conservatorships were something that were talked about like back then in the 80s and stuff. But that was news to me too. You know, when Gary had to sue his parents, you know, we'll get into it, but they basically have him put in a conservatorship. And it seems like they were trying to do that to get out of their wrongdoing. It was really, you know, that whole situation was really messed up. So we'll get into that whole court case. Gary's best friend, Dion, who is like one of the main narrators of this documentary as well. You know, seemed like he was the closest person to Gary and was the one that warned Gary about sort of the troubles that he thought, or I guess the people around Gary that he felt were taking advantage of Gary. So he eventually became his manager and was trying to protect him. And then his ex-girlfriend, he dated Anna Gray for 6.5 years. And again, it seems like she, like Dion, was one of the only people that really actually loved Gary. They met at like a Blockbuster. She was working at a Blockbuster. He came in to find a movie and then sort of waited for her um, on the hood of her car. And it's like they just became friends. And then, they started dating. Gary was still a virgin when he was married to Shannon Price. He went on Howard Stern. They showed clips from the Howard Stern show from like 99. I don't know if Gary ever had intercourse. Like he talked about how he had no urge and he was a virgin. So I don't know if Gary was still a virgin when he passed away, but he was still a virgin when he was married. But there was like, again, that these are the main players of this documentary. They obviously, start off talking about how Gary became this child star from different strokes. It started because, well, he started modeling. His mom talks about how, he saw like a model and he's like, I could do that, and he got into modeling very like pretty much, and that was like around 7, and he got an agent right away because he was just like so adorable and he was like really charismatic. So he ended up basically getting this job on Different Strokes with, Dana Plato and Todd Bridges. And that was actually where he ended up meeting Dion because his mom like worked on set and then him and Dion became friends, during that. Um, Obviously, like Gary's whole, his chubby cheeks and the fact that he was very short stature, that was what made Gary so cute. People loved him. Obviously, he had his signature line, what you talking about, Willis? Um, but basically, they discovered that he had a congenital kidney disease when he was 2 years old. And so when he was 5.5 years old, they found a kidney for him. And so he got this kidney. And so I always thought for some reason that it was the disease, the congenital kidney disease, is why he was so short in stature. But I found out from this doc, it was actually the immunosuppressive drugs that he had to take from the kidney surgery that stunted his growth. So I didn't realize it was the drugs that stunted his growth and not the disease itself. So that's why he only ever grew to be 4'8". Um, and obviously that's what became like the major issue in his life because as the show progressed, it got really popular, but then he turns 18 and everyone else is on the show maturing except him. He's still like basically this adult trapped in this kid's body. And they even showed old footage from Joan Rivers' talk show about how she asked him, she said something along the lines of like, do you feel they're maturing you? And he was like, no, and I'm very unhappy about it. I was surprised he was so candid, especially at that age on a national platform. But he was like, I'm not happy with it. It's something, I want to talk to, the producers about. So he was, very unhappy. And Dion said it was clear that he was unhappy. And then, basically what Dion alleges is that when Gary essentially aged out, they canceled the show. Gary wanted nothing to do with Hollywood. He basically said, I'm never going to work in Hollywood again. I'm totally done. But Dion alleges that, like, nobody, the people around him wouldn't let that happen. He had this agent, Vic, who was also featured in the doc. He said, Dion said it was Vic that was like the impetus to push Gary back into work. And, Todd Bridges talked about how Gary's father, Willie, people just didn't like him on set. They said he was, scary. Also, what Willie was doing when he was on set, he would, make people, he would bring in Gary and be like, here comes the star of the show. And he was just making other people on the set feel like, the show was only happening because Gary was there. So when Gary, didn't want to act anymore, be in Hollywood anymore, Dion's saying he was being pushed by the people around him to keep working. So eventually he escaped. Well, him and Dion, because Dion said basically, he got a call that Gary was gonna he basically was like, he was going to end his life. He was basically saying, I couldn't take this anymore. Um, and he wants it to be done. So Dion rushes over, he and Gary's there, and they cry together, all of that, and then they decide, we're going to leave and we're going to go to Hawaii. So, Gary talks about how he's like, Dion has saved my life, twice. I think he said saved my life twice. So, but that was the first time he attempted to take his own life. So they go to Hawaii, and it was like while he was in Hawaii that Dion was like, look, I think that you need to, start getting rid of some of these people. So Gary started firing people, basically his entire team, including his parents. And then Dion became his business manager. That was in 1987. And so once Dion became his manager, then Gary started, doing like a deep investigation into this finances. And so that's when all of the shady stuff about the finances was coming out. So Gary made $18 million over the life of his career, which doesn't seem like a lot today because people get paid like $18 million for a single movie. But I'm sure in like 1980, whatever, for a kid star, that was a lot of money. So obviously he was underage when he started. He was a minor when he started. So there was supposed to be 25% that was going into a blocked account. And the rest they found through this investigation of this 18 million, 20% went to his managers, his parents, 10% went to his agent, 5% went to his business manager, 7.5% went to lawyers. And then I can't remember what this number was. This amount went to taxes, savings, and other expenses. So more went to other people than went into Gary's own pocket of that $18 million. But he should have at least had that 25%. So when, he was going to court, he was like, I should at least have this 25%. Well, then once they do discovery in the case, well, here's the thing. So they get to court, his parents know they're being sued. They petition to have Gary put into a conservatorship. They believe that he couldn't handle his business affairs, and they asked the court to intervene. So, and at this point, Gary is like, he was 22 years old at this time. He also was suing, in addition to his parents, he was also suing Anita DeThomas. Anita DeThomas was the financial manager that was supposed to be taking care of this. Anita DeThomas and his parents, Sue and Willie, were being sued. So they're trying to put him in this conservatorship. Obviously, the people around him feel like they're trying to put him in this conservatorship because they're guilty and they want to try to eliminate the problem and be like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He needs to be conservator. They get to court, and the judge was just like, clearly like something feels off about this, calls Gary back into her chambers and has a secret conversation with him, in her chambers, comes out and it basically chastises his parents. Basically, once she talked to Gary and realized he was with it, he was astute, he was, brilliant. She was like, basically came out and was like, this man does not need a conservatorship. He's fully aware of what's going on. And she dismissed that, but they basically got a scolding. So they go through all this discovery. And it was 3 years of litigation before they even got to trial. Yes, Black Asian, his parents stole. The way, and his parents are in this documentary. It was very bold of them. I have to wonder if, they got a decent check or something from doing this, because I would be embarrassed to go on camera. To this day, they still deny. Now, they still deny all of this. They say they were doing everything by the book. But what came out in court was that 25% blocked account, that the money should be there. They were going behind Gary's back and going to the court to have money taken from that blocked account, and they were using it to invest. They had this large real estate portfolio that they invested in, that said they took $700,000 and they put it into a pension fund for Gary. Okay. They took $700,000 and put it in a pension fund from Gary, but then turned around and dissolved the pension and paid themselves. So while it looked like they were trying to do something, they were really being shady. They also removed millions for complex real estate deals. So they were like, investing in these like weird, like strip mall things, just these weird real estate ventures. All of them failed. Every single one of the investments that they were taking failed. And again, they were going to the court petitioning to have money removed from this blocked account, and they were using it. So even the blocked account money wasn't safe, which is just, again, totally trifling. So once all of this comes out, and I think the parents knew that this judgment was going to go for Gary, the mom is like, so we just decided that we were just going to settle it because we just didn't want it to go on. She acted like they did him a favor, like we just decided to pay the money. We didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, no, you did do something wrong. So Gary was given a judgment of $1.3 million. And then after that, he was like, I never want to talk to them again. Like they would try to contact his co-stars, Todd Bridges and stuff. And he would be like, I'm not giving you his number. So this is when he basically is trying to transition into just like adulthood, but he doesn't really have any money. I mean, he's won this judgment. I don't know, how they paid it, if they even had cash to pay it, if he got all of it, I still don't know. But one of the saddest things is like, his manager talked about, he loved superheroes. He loved, action adventures. He loved cops and stuff. And he always wanted to play like, an action hero or something like that. But obviously, even though it's crazy, because in 2024, a Gary Coleman could absolutely be in a movie about a superhero, all that, we watch like a Deadpool, all that, it could happen. But back then, it's like, if you weren't, Christopher Reeves, which that's another documentary I can't wait to watch, but like Perfect Superman, you weren't getting these if you weren't Arnold Schwarzenegger. But he wanted to do that. So when he took the security job, so he basically had to get a regular job, and he took a job as a security guard. And of course, in Hollywood, it's like people were sort of like making fun of it, but like what you kind of learn is like, he got to play a cop. Basically, it was like basically fake cop for him. And he really loved it. He really loved doing this job. It was probably like the first thing he was really happy about in a long time. So he's working, at this job. And one day he goes to like I guess a supply store, some sort of supply store to buy a bulletproof vest. Now, again, maybe he was taking his security job a little too seriously. I don't know why he would need a bulletproof vest. But basically what happens is like this is when it gets into the like, because you probably even seen like the Dave Chappelle show, like they made a skit about it. Like everyone made fun of it because a fan approaches him at the store and wants his autograph. And mind you, another thing that Gary was like really bothersome for Gary was like every time people saw him, they were like, say the line, say the line. They wanted him to say, what you talking about, Willis? And it was like they were trying to use him as like some like arcade game, like say the line, and it was bothering him. And he even was on, I think, the Jenny Jones show, and like someone in the audience was like, will you say the line? And he goes, look, like it's not that I understand that line means a lot to people. He's like, it's just I'm not attached to it anymore, and me even saying it now, it feels ridiculous, He had like full emotions and thoughts about this. But anyways, so this woman, this fan in the store, while he's trying to buy this bulletproof vest, approaches him for a signature. He gives an autograph, and but then she keeps wanting it more. She wants it personalized and whatever. And he's just like, look, like I don't, do this anymore. And so she gets mad and, says something about like, that's why you're like, a washed up, like she started talking smack to him in the store. And he assaults her. He punches her. From the witnesses on who were in the store said he jumped up and punched her. Now, again, he's 4'8", I believe, like 80 pounds. She was like 5'6" and like 205 pounds. So of course, in court arguing, like, it's like a giant versus, a little person. But, a witnesses that, did say they saw him do it. So he ended up getting, he pleaded no contest after that. And I think he got like something like 90 days probation. He didn't go to jail or anything like that, but he obviously like lost his job. And again, that's like the really sad part, because I think this was the first time he was really happy. And he sort of lost that thing. And then that was when he became more of a recluse. Now, at this time, I believe he's still dating. Oh, also, what was crazy, so after that lawsuit, she then sued Gary for like $1 million. And this ended up on a reality TV judge show. It was called Judge Mills Lane, because I think that he had to resort to kind of doing these sort of stunt things to even pay bills. He was being sued for $1 million. They ended up taking this case to this reality TV show, and the Judge Mills Lane ended up making him have to pay her for her medical expenses, which was like less than $2,000. But yeah, I mean, I kind of want to find the videos of this episode, but and that wasn't the last time he ended up on a court show. We'll get into it, but he ended up on a court show for his divorce too. So then he meets Shannon Price. So he starts getting kind of like these random roles. He did this movie called Church Ball, which I've never seen. I think it was around 2008. And he met, or no, not 2008. He met her in, I don't remember when he met her, but he met her when I think maybe it's 2005. He did the Church Ball, whenever the Church Ball movie was being filmed, maybe 2005. He had relocated to Utah to do this movie. And he told Anna, who he had been dating for like 6.5 years, and pretty much like they were living in an apartment in LA together. He was like, pack up the LA apartment and come to Utah. So she like packs everything up on her own, drives out there to Utah for 4 days. She says she pulls up to the house, okay? And Gary's walking out with Shannon Price. She's like, what is this? And she said that, like, again, they never had sex, but they were very intimate. And they had this relationship. And she said, like, look, if you want to explore, that we've always talked about, like, if you want more things and you want to explore, do that. So she kind of moves out to Utah to like be there for him. And he doesn't even tell her, like, yeah, I've met this new guy. I think Shannon was only 19 at the time that she met him on the set, and she kind of snuck onto the set. But she acted like she didn't know who Gary Coleman was. That's the whole thing. It's like Shannon's acting like, I didn't even know who this guy was. But everyone's basically saying, like, not like she was just a taker. Anna was like, she was a taker from all she wanted was money from him. Shannon claims no, like, I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted him to be able to work because he had to pay bills. But everyone's like, no, she was a taker. She was forcing him to do all of these movies and stuff that were degrading him that he didn't want to do, but she was like saying, he needed to do it to like make money. There were like domestic violent incidences. Both of them would get like violent with each other. And so it was a really chaotic relationship, and it was well known it was a chaotic relationship. So that's why when he passed away, it was really odd. So I kind of skipped over kind of like the major part. So Gary's kidney that he had received when he was 5.5, I don't remember how old it was. Let me say he was, because at some point the kidney absorbed into his body. And from that moment on, yes, in 1985, the kidney from the surgery got absorbed into his body. And from December 31st, 1985 until he died in 2008, Gary lived his entire life with no kidneys, not one. So he had to do dialysis 3 times a week for 3 to 4 hours at a time. So that's why first of all, that was happening while the show was still happening, I believe, in 1985. So he was tired, exhausted, sick all the time. Like, you have to, dialysis is cycling, it says your blood is cycled Every drop of blood is cycled and cleansed through your body 3 to 4 times a week, 3 to 4 hours a day. That's what he was doing. So he's doing this for years, all his life. So the day he had the accident, he had just had dialysis, and everyone said, like, he always just would come home, go to sleep. Someone said that, or Shannon claims that, he was going to make her lunch. He was going to cook something for her. She was in bed. She didn't feel well or something like that, or she was in bed. And then she heard a loud noise downstairs. It sounded like pots and pans. And then she comes down and she just sees blood everywhere. And she calls 911. The 911 call, this is why you need to watch the doc. Listening to the 911 call, it's a very odd 911 call because she's like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he's still alive. There's blood everywhere. Oh, I can't be in here. I don't feel good. I don't feel sick. The whole 911 call is about her and how the blood is affecting her and how she can't be in the room. She doesn't try to like give him CPR or, like, if someone you love is laying on the floor, you don't care about slipping in blood, touching, you're going to try to save their life no matter what. Like, I can't imagine. But the 911 call, she just was everything she said was just very odd. And so what was even more odd was the ambulance comes, they take him away. She does not get in the ambulance. She does not get in a car and go to the hospital. She goes back in and goes to sleep or, and just goes. And she was like, like, I just wasn't feeling well or whatever. I was tired. Someone you love, you don't know if they're surviving, and then you don't even go to the hospital. It's weird. So Dion says that, like, the parents say that they were trying to reach out, like she wouldn't talk to them. Dion said he finally had to tell Shannon, we have got a call from the hospital. They say he is not going to make it. You need to go to the hospital. And this is where it gets sketchy because apparently Gary had a directive in his will that if he was ever on, like, because he was basically on life support at this point, and his directive in his will was if he was ever on life support to keep him on for, I believe it was at least 15 days, for 2 weeks. Yes, his directive said he wanted to stay on life support for 2 weeks. Shannon gets to the hospital and, mind you, Shannon and Gary have divorced at this point. And that's another thing. They were on divorce court. You remember divorce court? They were on divorce court together. So anyways, Gary and Shannon have been divorced, but she's still living in the house. Like, and so she is still named as like the next of kin, basically, as like who would be responsible for him in the event of like this, even though, again, you have Anna Gray over here who really loves him, but she never married him and, whatever. So 2 days after he's admitted to the hospital, she pulls the plug on him. Like, again, his parents, he didn't have a relationship, but like his parents didn't have any say. Dion didn't have any say. Anna didn't say. She got the decision to pull the plug. And Dion and Anna just felt like there was something wrong about that. Like his directive said, give him two weeks. Now, Shannon points to the directive in his will and says, well, it says 2 weeks, but it also says if 2 or more doctors agree that he can't, come back, that the plug could be pulled. And because multiple doctors had said, like, he's not there, he's gone. But then this is where it gets sketchier, because not only do people already feel it's shady that she pulled the plug, next thing they know, Globe magazine has a picture of Gary on his deathbed with Shannon taking a selfie together. And this is when they're already thinking like Shannon had something to do with it. And she's taking a selfie and it's on the cover of Globe. Now, of course, nobody knows how it got on the Globe, but the rumors is that she sold it for upwards of $10,000. Again, not confirmed anywhere that I read, but that's what the rumor was. Tiff Marie says, I don't know how she wasn't questioned more. She should have been arrested for theft. I don't know how she wasn't. I mean, again, I don't know how much she was or wasn't questioned because, again, at the time, I I didn't really know anything about what was happening in Gary Coleman's life in 2008. So I mean, I would love to go, you know, in research, like, was she questioned? Like, did they, but it seemed like they didn't even, it was like he was on life support. She had the final. It was really crazy. Now, here's what's crazier. There was some stuff they kind of like they did get into, and then stuff that I had to kind of look up on my own. But like ultimately, Anna, who again was his first girlfriend, basically, Anna, even though Shannon could have pulled the plug, Gary had still made Anna over in charge of his estate. So she was responsible for, it's not like he had a bunch of assets really, anyways, but Anna was responsible. Shannon tried to then sue Anna because she was like, I was the wife, basically, even though we weren't divorced, like it was me. But from what I read online, that Anna won that case. Shannon lost that. So she did not get to have any rights to any of his estates. Again, Shannon claims, like, again, she claims she loved Gary and then it wasn't, about money or anything like that. But yeah. What else? There was, I mean, that's pretty much, we don't know what happened. I mean, again, Shannon says, she had nothing to do with it. And it's crazy for people to think that. The parents still believe that, they didn't do anything wrong, that they were, doing stuff by the book. And, they really stand by that they weren't stealing from their son. And and then Dion seemed to have, it seems like Anna and Dion probably have a good relationship. It seemed like he had a lot of the collectibles in his garage. He showed a lot of the collectibles that Gary had. Um, um, but it's just really sad. I mean, he just really lived it just felt like a really sad life. And I know there's a new Child Stars. I saw there's a Child Stars documentary that's out on Hulu now. I want to watch it because, again, Child Stars in the 80s, but like Child Stars every generation, but especially in the 80s when it was just kind of this brand new thing when to have these child stars and there was just no rules or regulations around it was crazy. Tiff Marie says she was barely looked into as a suspect, which is wild. You would think, even though he wasn't a relevant famous person at the time of his death, he was still a very well-known famous person. Like, everyone knew Gary Coleman's name. So yeah, I don't know what I should have looked up and seen what Shannon was up to now, but yeah. Anyways, I recommend it. I thought it was a good doc. I love that we're back to doing like 90-minute documentaries again. I feel like there's a lot of docu-series out there. We got to watch like 3 episodes, maybe 6 episodes, which is great. Sometimes I just want a 90-minute doc. I don't need it to carry over to multiple episodes. Sometimes just give me the gist. But I actually felt that in this case, they could have done a little bit more because I think there was stuff that I had to look up on my own to kind of get information. So some of that stuff would have been interesting. Anyways, thanks for joining my Thursday live. Obviously, I'll do some top headlines probably in our next live because we have lots of Diddy updates and so much more. But thanks for joining again. Make sure you're following and share with everyone. Make sure they're following here on the Talk of Shame. I will see you next time. Bye.